Thinking about building a spec home, I've worked with construction companies doing well over $100 million worth of spec homes per year. I've also watched friends of mine lose money because they built the wrong home for the wrong area. In this video, we're going to discover how much cash you actually need to build a spec home, where to build or what to build to sell it fast, so you don't waste your time building a house that nobody wants. And I'm also going to reveal the 5 biggest mistakes that can sink your project and exactly how to avoid them. So the first question that you should be asking yourself is this worth it? And is it right for me? Spec homes can make you millions of dollars or it can bury you in debt. The difference really comes down to how you handle all the moving parts. The thing with spec builds is there are a bunch of components that you will need to learn and get right that are not typically handled in a normal build when you're building a custom home for a client and something like that. So there's risks that are involved with market changes. It's a spec build, it's speculation. So there's just inherent risks to this type of a model. That said, it can provide a much more enjoyable building experience potentially because you aren't working with a specific client and you're able to just build the building that you want the way that you want it, but you still have a client in mind, and getting that right is really something that's super important, and we're going to be getting to just a little bit later. And as I mentioned, there's a lot of moving parts, so you're going to have to find land, surveying, you got to finance the deal, you're going to have to deal with a bunch of different people like real estate agents, realtors, designers, and things like that, and really have a lot dialed in and enable you to be able to do this and profit from it. So the first kind of speculation build that I did, investment, I was working with a partner and it did not go well. And I quickly realized that just because I could build houses and I'd done a lot of construction work in the past didn't necessarily make me a good spec builder or a good real estate investor. And yes, I learned later on and things changed, but realize when you're getting into it that there's going to be some blind spots, there's going to be some gray areas, there's going to be a learning curve. And your first couple of builds are probably going to be your hardest, and they can either make or break you. And as well, there's just a lot of different things. So how do I get rich is probably what you're asking. Like, how do I make money at this? What I have seen in my experience is there's sort of 2 different types of spec builders. There's the low volume spec builders. These are usually kind of self-employed people, smaller builders, and they're doing maybe a handful of spec homes a year. Really, it provides them a nice income, but they're still very much involved with the business. And it's more or less like a regular builder type model. They're just building spec homes. The people that really make it are doing this in volume. They've got a system, they've got a process, they've got a team of people around them, and they really know their numbers well. Plus, if you're getting into this and you want to get rich at it, make sure you have contingencies in place so that you've got money to pull from. And that leads me into my next point. So you determine this is something you want to do. Now you're asking how much? How much is this going to cost you? Most builders underestimate this by half. I'll show you why spec homes take twice the cash you think. Now contractors can start with $0 using other people's money. So you may have heard of this before if you're in the investing world, using other people's money, OPM. What does this mean? This means that you're going to get financing. You're going to have creative financing, essentially, maybe getting rights to use the land from the current owner, or you're going to be using some sort of collateral, maybe raising investments with other investors, so private money lenders or hard money lenders. There's a number of different financing options. I'm not going to dive deep into all of this, but essentially, you can either put up some of your own money and do a more traditional bank type mortgage, or you can go and find investors or hard money lenders to kind of finance the deal for you. Both of them work. I've seen both be successful. In my personal opinion, I would always want to make sure that I've got at least 20% of the final cost of the project of money available to me, typically my own money in the deal. Now, I know a lot of the gurus out there is like, don't put your own money in, or just, you can start with zero. You don't need anything. But I'm going to get to that later as far as like the mistakes, and it can become a house of cards and ruin you financially if anything goes wrong. And like I mentioned earlier, because this is your first time into it, you definitely want to be cautious. You want to have money available to you, and you do want to find someone or talk with someone who's done this before to really know the ins and outs and ideally mentor you in this process. So educate yourself on what it's going to take and really know your numbers and get clear on how much money you have and need before jumping into it. So at this point, you should be asking yourself, what mistakes should I avoid? As I've mentioned, there's a number of pitfalls in building spec homes, and it can become a house of cards when you are overextended in the debt or you've promised too much. I had this happen to myself where we were building our first spec home, overestimated our selling price, which is not uncommon. And essentially, the financing and the money and time that I put into building the spec home started to drag down my construction business. They were separate businesses at the time, which is another thing you need to look into. If you're building spec homes, is should you have multiple companies? Should you set up a company specifically for certain investments or for certain homes, or have a holding company? You want to be talking to an accountant, experienced, advisor in that regard as far as structuring, but realize that the money and time that you're putting into building spec homes will affect your other business practices, and possibly if you have like custom home build clients or things like that, that one can affect the other, and to watch out to it. Also, if you have too much debt and you're overextended and things don't go as planned, then you have to have some sort of contingency to float the carrying costs or cost of keeping the house on the market before it sells. I see this all the time with contractors who wait too long to put the house on the market. Talk to your realtor, but the sooner you can get the property listed, even before you start building, and you can show a speculative home or the plans that you plan to build, but have the house on the market so you can get a buyer, ideally before you complete the project. And don't wait too long until everything is perfect before listing it. Another common mistake is overbuilding for the area. So you do not want to have the best house on the street, because if every other house is kind of older or not as big as your house, it's going to be hard to sell that house on that street because people are looking at it and the price tag, and the houses around them just aren't going to facilitate that type of investment from them. Whereas if there's nothing but luxury homes on that street and yours is actually a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit cheaper because of that, it's more desirable because it's a great neighborhood for a lower price. So this is going to lead into my next point of like, what should you build? And the $100 million contractor that I mentioned, they're not guessing what to build. They're very, very dialed into the market. They've been doing it for years. They know exactly what colors, what sizes, what neighborhoods, which developments to develop, what the lot sizes should be. You really need to do your homework here, and you need to connect with and talk with a lot of professionals to create your team. Spec homing building is very much a team dynamic to it, and you need really good people around you in order to be effective with this. So some of the people you're going to need on your team is multiple realtors. I would talk to many different realtors. You're going to have your top, one, two that you're maybe going to list the house with, but you should be talking to a number of different realtors, know what average prices are for the size, what they suggest as far as, again, like everything down to square footages, colors, styles, location, finishes, types of homes, all this stuff. You should have a really good clear indication of like, these are the ones that sell the quickest, this is what you should build for this area, and verify that information with a number of different realtors to get a full picture, because you're investing a lot of time, energy, and money, and if you can't sell it when it comes time to hit the market, you're going to have all these carrying costs, and you're probably going to have to lower your price potentially than what you want if it doesn't sell or the markets take a dive, which is typical. It may be 8 months to a year before that property actually hits the market or is ready for market. And by that time, things might have changed significantly. Another great resource is go to all the other builders' show homes in the area. So if there's probably new developments around your city, go check out the other show homes and get some ideas. Talk with a few interior designers, ask them what, have they built spec homes? What seems to sell the quickest? What do you need to do? And realize that this is very much an investment. So you need it to look like $1 million, but obviously cost you much less. So you definitely you need to be thinking like economy as far as what kind of materials and certain fixtures that you're putting into it, but you need it to be at a high enough quality that someone's not going to walk into it and look around and feel cheap. So you need to find that medium of like, what level of finishes can I put in here that's going to make it look really good? It's going to be high enough quality that I'm happy to put, my brand and my name behind it, but it's not so fancy that it's got out of control. I had a friend who their first spec home, they did that. They built the nicest house on the street. It was big. They went a little bit overboard with some of their finishes, their tile work, and all these things. It was a beautiful home, but it sat on the market for a long time, and they ended up having to lower their selling price, kind of ratcheting down over a number of months, and ended up not making any money. I believe they may have even lost some. Didn't know the exact numbers, but I know that they didn't turn a profit on that property because they had over speculated, overbuilt for that area. Whereas if they would have built a more modest home, would have cost them probably a lot less and it would have sold a lot quicker. So now that you've got the knowledge and understanding of how to move into spec building, you're going to want to check out this next video on how to schedule projects and keep projects on schedule, because time is money, especially in the spec building world. Every month that you can save in the production as well as the selling of the schedule of your house is going to save you a lot of money and make it much more profitable and lucrative to build your spec home.